Kevin Shelton, and I'm giving a presentation today, an object speech. But this really isn't an object, it's more of an old friend. And this was an old friend that took me a long time to get. It's an old friend at the beach. This map isn't just an object, it's an old friend. In 1985, when it was new, I couldn't afford it. But 8 years ago, when I saw one for sale, I realized I had another chance to get the motorcycle of a 2 decades old dream, a 2 decades old love affair. I had another chance to get a 1985 Honda VF 1000R motorcycle, the industry leader then and an old friend now. My riding history consists of, as a young child in school, I spent all my time studying cars, trucks, and motorcycles. Loved motorcycles. And I had a friend, a best friend at that time, that had a mini bike. I don't know if any of you have ever seen one. I don't even think they sell them anymore, but I always wanted a mini bike. So I was lucky enough that one year my mother got me a mini bike for Christmas. My mother bought me a mini bike that looked just like a real motorcycle. I was stoked, I was so happy. But that kind of wasn't enough. I just kind of had something bigger. So we traded that mini bike and got a real motorcycle, a Honda CL70. None of you have ever heard of it. I've never seen one, but it was fun, and I had a great time with it. But I kept trading up, and I kept having to have bigger and bigger, so I finally got a 1973 Honda CB350. Most of y'all weren't even born then. One night, well, I rode this for a while, kind of put it around the neighborhood, but one night while going to a skating rink with some friends, saw a really bad motorcycle accident. We stopped and helped the guy. I picked him up, helped pick him up, picked him up by his thigh, and his thigh was just jelly. It just crushed the bone. We got him away from the motorcycle just before it exploded. Yes, that was that brought about the end of my motorcycle riding for a while. Here in the jail, I tell you. Traded my motorcycle in and bought my first car, 1968 Mustang. And as you guys already know, I like Mustangs. Anyway. So we're going to move forward a little bit. In 1984, while stationed at Luke Air Force Base in Glendale, Arizona, I decided I wanted to get back into motorcycle riding. Motorcycle riding was great there. The weather was great. It was warm and sunny all the time. Only rained 1 month out of a year. It was wonderful. So I decided, well, I'm gonna get a motorcycle. Many of my friends there had motorcycles. I had extra cash to buy a motorcycle because I didn't have any real big bills, no kids, no house, none of that kind of good stuff. Girls like motorcycles, and I like girls that like motorcycles. All went hand in hand. So I got hooked on motorcycles. Motorcycles are very addictive. I bought my first motorcycle, an old Honda CB500. So let's say this was built before many of you were born. Well, that lasted about 6 months. I had to have something bigger and better. So that's when I moved on to, that's what my little buddy looked like when he was brand new. That was the lesser model. If you couldn't afford the really good one, that's what I wanted to buy. That's back when I thought I wanted to own a Harley Davidson. That's as close as I could get to one with my paycheck. So, I liked that. That lasted for a while. I kept that for 6 months. And I had to have something bigger and better. My Honda 700 Sabre. Loved that motorcycle, rode all over Arizona with it, had a great time with it. But by now, I and the used motorcycle dealership had become we'd become one. I made so many trips to the showroom, they knew me by my first name. But like as I said before, motorcycles are addictive, and I became addicted to speed, so I had to move on to something bigger and better. I had to find the biggest, fastest machine I could possibly afford. Of course, the insurance for the biggest, fastest motorcycle for 1 year was actually the price of the motorcycle. The motorcycle was $6,000. The insurance for 1 year was $6,000. I wasn't going to get that motorcycle. We were going to have something a little bit smaller. But now the motorcycle market is heating up with sports bikes. bikes that looked like they could race on a road racing course, so I had to have one of those. Sports bikes used to be called cafe racers, because over in Europe, the guys would race for one cafe, to another cafe, drink coffee, and talk about how great their motorcycles were and how fast they were. Guys modified their stock motorcycles to go faster and look like road racing motorcycles, which was the rage in Europe. So these motorcycles really came over from Europe. And now, motorcycle manufacturers are starting to catch on, and they're starting to build motorcycles that look like factory road race bikes. They're calling them replica racers or sports bikes. I want a sports bike. I'm going to get a sports bike. I returned to my favorite motorcycle dealership again. The dealership is filled with shiny new sports bikes. That's when I saw that new Honda VF1000R. I fell in love with that shiny new Honda VF1000R. That motorcycle was a beast. It was actually designed to be a race bike. Limited edition, no money object, for competition purposes only. They put in every little gadget and every little go-fast trick that they could possibly think of. So I felt that if I had this motorcycle, I could go fast. The Honda V4 line of flagship models is at least, this is one of its best models. This thing was derived for Honda's AMA Formula One winning FWS 1000 race bike. The R model used the FWS's gear-driven camshaft design. Gear-driven camshafts. I thought that was great. The engine on this motorcycle was a double overhead cam, 4-valve, with gear-driven camshafts. And unlike any other motorcycle at the time, which had their inline engines, this was a V4 configuration. No, I'm not going to show you the V4 configuration. This motorcycle had a plethora of go-fast goodies that included just about everything that was on any factory race bike. I can go fast on this bike, or at least that's what I thought. But unfortunately, heartbroken, I couldn't afford that shiny new Honda VF1000R. My little airman paycheck wouldn't afford that, so I wound up getting my GS1150E. At that point in time, the GS1150E was the fastest motorcycle on the drag strip, covering the quarter mile in less than 11 seconds. Okay, that was good enough for me. I couldn't afford the nice VF1000R, but I could afford that. So the Suzuki wasn't a technological marvel like the Honda, but it was lighter and a lot faster. So I kept that motorcycle for 10 years. That motorcycle went from Phoenix, Arizona, Shreveport, Louisiana, then over to Midland, Texas. But in those 10 years, I put on less than 12,000 miles. It got babied, it was cleaned, waxed, polished, and got all kind of go-fast goodies put on it. It was loved. It wasn't a motorcycle, it was a friend. And unfortunately, that's kind of how I treat all of my motorcycles. They're not inanimate objects. They're old buddies that I can share adventures with, and that's kind of how the story goes. Well, I sold that bike in 1996, moved to Dayton, Ohio, motorcyclist, but I still wished I had one. So I'm still in the Air Force Reserve, and I get to come back to good old Langley Air Force Base from Dayton, Ohio in 2006. And I've decided I want to get back into motorcycle racing. Like many of us in a midlife crisis, I found myself with the passion and the resources, now I got money, to buy this motorcycle. So I started looking for motorcycles on the internet. I found a man that was moving back to Sweden and had to lighten his load. He had one too many motorcycle projects, so he had to get rid of one of them. That being his 1985 Honda VF1000R. Well, I dragged my daughter and her little toddler that were visiting me from that time from Midland, Texas, to go see my dream bike. She had no idea what she was getting in for. When I got to this motorcycle, it wouldn't start. We had to push start it to make it start. It had flat tires, but I didn't care. Got it started, it ran, I bought it. Of course, the nice man had to deliver it to me because it wouldn't run, but I didn't care. Once he delivered it to me, there was a big smile on my face. But now that I got it home, things got a little more interesting. My first time really trying to get on the motorcycle, I almost threw my hip out of place. I'm old and fat. The motorcycle old and fat. It wasn't making for a good combination. You know, like I said, it's a sports bike, and you know, not easy to get on and off, but it's like, that's all right, I've got it. Well, then I found out that starter, the reason it wasn't started, the starter was bad. That turned into a 2.5-month journey to find a starter for it, because the dealership wanted $400 for a starter. I wouldn't give them $400. I found some shop over in Hampton that would find starters and rebuild starters. They couldn't rebuild it. So 2.5 months later, several trips back and forth, they found me a starter. The nice man that owned the starter shop asked me to never return, because he said he had actually lost money on that starter. So I didn't care. You said you could give it to me for that price, and you go give it to me for that price. Which of course meant I could never ever talk to him ever again, but I had my starter, so I was happy. So after a new starter, an oil change, the bike is running well and I'm happy. But unfortunately now we're back on our way back to Ohio. But I had fun riding in Ohio until the Ohio winter came along and killed the battery. So now we're out shopping for a new battery for a 20-year-old motorcycle. But it's all right. Found a new battery, and then summer came along. So now we could have fun riding around, going to the ice cream shop, buying ice cream, and having fun. Well, unfortunately now we're nearing the end of our adventure. I moved back to Norfolk, Virginia. I and my old friend are still taking rides to the beach and to the motorcycles and to the ice cream shop. It likes ice cream just like I do. It likes the beach like I do. And the big bike is not just a hunk of metal, it's an old friend to share adventures with. You know, it's to you it's just an inanimate object, but to me, it's an old friend. I can go talk to it anytime I want. It doesn't get mad, it doesn't say get out, it just sits there and listens. Doesn't ask for any of the ice cream or anything, which is another good thing. I don't have to share. But like I said, you know, whenever I'm sad, I can go over and talk to the big bike and it'll cheer me up. I'll start it up, let it run for a while. He listens, he never complains. And I finally have my old friend, something that I've been trying to get for 20 years. The big bike has a nice home and a nice new storage unit along with the tools that I use to keep it running. Of course, after 5 years, the battery gave up the ghost, so now we're sitting in storage, dead battery, cold winter comes along, not being started, not being loved, just sitting in there, you know, nobody going over to talk to it. It was a sad time for me and the bike. And when I finally did go start it up, it wouldn't idle. It would run, but it wouldn't idle, which meant that now it's going to require a trip over the shop, which is okay, except that no shop in the area has ever seen this bike. Even the Honda dealers never even heard of this bike. The one guy that had heard of it retired years ago. So we did find one guy that actually had seen this motorcycle. And this man doesn't charge to work on the motorcycle. He charges you even to roll it into the shop. So if you roll it into his shop, it's going to cost you $100, whether he gets to look at it or do anything else to it. It's going to cost you $100. Thus, it hadn't gone to his shop. I did find a man who would work on it though. He said that he had seen it. But it's kind of hard to believe that someone had actually seen something that's almost 30 years old. Especially when the person talking about it is only 30 years old. So it was a little kind of hard to, you know, to really trust this person. And of course now I'm a full-time student. Money is kind of short, so I can't afford to give you $500 to look at it. The 4 carburetors for this motorcycle cost $1,000, so it's like, no, you can't buy a carburetor. So unfortunately, I don't get to ride the bike much anymore. This bike is designed to be ridden fast, not just puttering around. I'm too old and fat for that type of riding, so like, where do I go from here? As a young man stationed at Luke Air Force Base in Glendale, Arizona, I fell back in love with riding a motorcycle. After working my way back into riding and buying a succession of smaller motorcycles, I was ready for that special bike. I went to the dealership, I found my dream motorcycle, but I couldn't afford it. So for years I dreamed of having this motorcycle. So when the time came in 2006, I jumped on the chance to buy my dream bike. I bought it and I had a great deal of fun. But now I seem to have reached a fork in the road. Do I get it fixed and just putter around town on it? Or do I sell it and let someone else enjoy it the way it's meant to be enjoyed? This is a hard question. I don't seem to have an answer for it yet. Until I do, I'll go to the storage unit every week and let it run for a while and reminisce about the good old days with my old friends.